questions are all very related. Also,
extremely. That's what I was going to say. They are very, very related. We can actually cover them in 3 minutes.
Yeah, we can try our best. I think there's something that we need to debunk. More than 90% of businesses in Kenya are small businesses. So even, I think it's very easy to talk about KM as if it is an Apple, as if it's a representative of Apple's or Microsoft. No, we don't have those type of businesses in Kenya. A lot of our businesses are really all small by structure. And an association such as the Association of Manufacturers has very many micro, some of the smaller segments. I think sometimes you pay a lot of attention to just who the leadership might be or might not be. But the former chairperson of KAM, Flora Mutahi, is an SME leader. So let us also at least deal with some of those facts. And in my own work, I think the work of the ministry is a work for all businesses. The ministry is currently now finalizing a revision of the SME policy. We've looked at it, and actually, in my view, it's really focusing a lot on the micro enterprises, because there's space and because of a belief that this is the best way of nurturing entrepreneurs within Kenya. So on the question of technical training and ensuring that we have the necessary training, if you visit our technical training institutions, they actually are offering a variety of trainings. I think the big embarrassment for government is that there isn't sufficient enrollment. You have fairly good schools, but most of our children don't appreciate and have and value technical training. So you actually have excellent facilities that are underutilized at present. So we need to work on that, and I think the members of the House can actually help in popularizing technical training institutions in their constituencies. But in addition to that, some of the work that the ministry has done is the establishment of common manufacturing facilities in all constituencies. The CIDCs that were developed as part of the economic stimulus program. We've actually put in money to ensure that those are completed. The Ministry of Roads, where there wasn't access, has put in money to ensure that those are accessible. The Ministry of Energy, and I look forward to working with some of you as we launch functional CIDCs, because I know I worked on that as PS, and I've still seen that it is still in the budget to complete operationalization of these CIDCs, which become common centers, because one of the challenges we found is access to working infrastructure for SMEs is a problem. KIE sheds is not enough, so it is these common centers will help a lot. I think answering, and I think I've touched Honorable Sabina's question on SMEs in the same answer, and I agree with you that our industrialists need to focus on ensuring that they meet the quality that people look for. But I think we also need to come and work with ourselves and to improve also our sense of dignity. There's no dignity in wearing used underwear and all some of these things that we see around us. So even if, fixing a new one, and there are many people who are producing this within our country, we really need to encourage ourselves that if you're buying something used, buy something that is not available within the country. On the question of entrepreneurs and startups, part of the policy actually handles that matter, Honorable Mbui, because we need to create an ecosystem that supports innovation and startups, links them up with sufficient mentorship, sufficient training, sufficient financing. Some of what we've been doing with challenges and some companies giving some money for startups to help them, commercialize their innovation need to be scaled up some more, and we need to keep building on that ecosystem. And that's some work that we've already been doing and continue to address. I think on the question of the FTA, I know it's been topical. People have written around it, and I would have been quite surprised if it did not come up. in this conversation. I think Kenya has been very clear. First, I think it's important to state that we do not yet have an agreement to sign. We are embarking on discussions and negotiations of such an agreement. And the reason that Kenya is embarking on that is recognizing that, and it's similar to how we negotiated the EPAs, and you remember the debate around them. Preferential trade arrangements or preferential market access are diminishing. The Lome agreement with regard to Europe had been a preferential non-reciprocal agreement, but it was time-bound. And part of the negotiations for the economic partnership agreement was to ensure that you have a predictable arrangement that can ensure and invite investors into your country, and they can work with it. The same thing with AGOA. We enter the US market through a preferential agreement that is set to expire in 2025. So it is important for Kenya to, and the US government has clearly indicated in 2015 that the successor to AGOA must be a defined reciprocal arrangement. And they've been exploring this, and there's been much discussion on it. So I think Kenya has chosen, in order to secure its own interests post 2025, to start this process. But Kenya has also declared, and the president himself has said that in the exploration of a trade regime with the United States, we will not reach an agreement that compromises the agreements that we have made in the region. So that is in East Africa and in the Africa Continental Free Trade Area. We've signed on to a common external tariff as East Africans. It is not possible to negotiate tariffs outside that context. So it's quite clear that the parameters of the negotiations with the US have been declared by the president. We're also working on building on the current, working from what we have in the current preferences. So once the mandate, and that mandate is being developed, but it is already, you're starting a conversation with certain boundaries already established. And there's no interest, in my view, from the US in also seeking to disrupt the continental integration arrangement. So, as said, this is a pace setter, an initial agreement that should demonstrate, because the US doesn't have a free trade agreement with any country in sub-Saharan Africa. So the agreement that we would reach within ourselves in Kenya should also be an inspiration for what we could reach with other countries in the region. So there's no danger that we are breaking apart, because we already duty bound, and the law is quite clear in that regard. And then Honorable Washali, I am actually very surprised by your comments, because I left KM in, afterwards serving for 11 years. Surely 11 years is a very long time in one institution. It was time to move on. So I'm not quite certain where you get those facts, but if you speak to the chairman himself, he will confirm that it was my wish. Actually, it had been my wish for a while to move on to something else. You can't work for 11 years for one institution. So I certainly am surprised by the tone or the comments that you've made.
The next round of the final one. Let's start with the elder.
Thank you.
Jimmy Angwenyi. Just in case you may have forgotten his name. You have seen him. He's like the image of the institution.
He's one of my original clients in Parliament at the IEA. Yes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I was in
2016. So we've actually seen increased sales to this market. So it would have been nice to benefit from a lot more. There's about 6,400 lines, but we are not using very many of them. But at least it has opened up the market, and there's record that at least US trade it's been beneficial. Yusuf, the Honorable Yusuf from Gikomba. I think in my but the Honorable representing the interests of I think I was very clear in my statement, and I'm sorry that it sounded different, but I think we recognize the role of Mitumba in our current socio-economic development. It's not something that we can wish away. And these are businesses that the government has facilitated over time, otherwise they wouldn't be there. And it is a responsibility of my ministry to facilitate that. I think the question we are saying is that we should also be aspiring, just like the way we are aspiring to produce a car, we should also be aspiring to produce as much as possible of these goods that we import used, because that is part of our national aspiration. I think we want to join us in ensuring that we are producing and replacing a lot of these imports. The Kenya Bureau of Standards is a trade facilitator, and it is important that all traders and all those importers comply with the standards that have been set in the country, that they follow through the necessary inspections. If there is undue frustration after following all due processes, and that's obviously something that we need to be able to intervene in. It's my responsibility to ensure that the agencies discharge their duties as fairly and as efficiently as expected of public agencies. Support to the Juakali sector, it's part of our SME development, and I think there have been some examples. Sometimes when we look, for instance, at the recent development, and because I think government has really been focusing on support to SMEs and those sectors, and giving them preferential access and in public procurement. And a great example is, the recent completed Park Road housing project as part of affordable housing. We contracted, and I think you're aware of that. We contracted at least groups from the Gikomba who were contracted, as were groups from Bong Road, supplying doors, as were the guys from Kariobangi, and that supply contract has enabled them to even expand their businesses, and we've seen it in terms of the facilities and access that they have. So, and they will continue to benefit from such government projects and other procurement reforms. So at least the Buy Kenya, Build Kenya recognizes that we must support our SMEs within it. So it's not, they're not shut out from it. The Honorable Joyce on the cost and competitiveness of manufacturing and support to production, say by KIPI and patenting. I think cost of energy has been a big issue. There are many other things around it, whether it's cost of labor, cost of energy, cost of finance. There are many other costs that affect manufacturing. But actually, we really need to also recognize the work that government has done to address these issues. I think last week, the Minister for Energy gazetted even cheaper rates of about, I think, 8 shillings per kilowatt hour for large industrial consumers, levied or who are metered on 220 kVA. So at least we are addressing it and targeting the interests of manufacturers. In the industrial park, they'll be able to get it at 4 shillings per kilowatt hour. So at least you're addressing it as much as possible and ensuring that the utilities, even as we meet the needs of industry, which is obviously my main concern, you also must ensure that the utilities are well resourced in order to supply the necessary power. Otherwise, if you get cheap power, but you are often on rationing, then it negates the intention. So it's a balancing game. Ensure that industry can get power, but ensure utilities can also supply. And that, I think I focused on the Juakali bit. In terms of encouragement, the Constitution really focuses on a lot of public participation. And this is a country that has engaged in dialogue with business for a very long time. The associations of manufacturers, the Federation of Employers, the Chamber are long-standing partners of government and constantly engaged in dialogue, and very little happens without that dialogue. But there's also expansion of dialogue across all sectors with SMEs. And SMEs have often told us that they don't feel they'd like to also speak, and have their own association. And we have entertained them at the ministry when they have come together. So this is, we listen often and frequently as we develop policies to all these, with all these different groups. Honorable Sankok, yes, I appreciate the comment that you've made. And out of the top of my head, and that's something we can probably we can continue to work together on, is that we need to work on ensuring that we recognize the needs of disabled people as we set up markets, whether it's different, whether it's setting up different locations where they can be part of. I have visited other countries where in a market there's actually a section where differently abled people have their stand. So maybe something that we can continue to work on and control. But at least we recognize it, but I think in our design of facilities, we also need to pay attention. So I promise you that it's something I'd like to continue to engage with you on. Honorable Chepkut, the revival of FLOSPA, what would you like us to do?
Let the government take it.
Okay, then I guess there must be a mechanism for revival of agencies, just the way it has been done with Rivertex, and obviously the necessary analysis must be done, and the business case made for it. And that's something that we can continue to engage on. Thank you. Is that something I missed?
You talked about, I think it has been, maybe about cheap fertilizer.
No,
Subsidized fertilizer for cotton growers. Maybe, but she has been nominated to Industry, Trade and Enterprise Development. Seeds and agriculture. But she obviously, as by way of facilitation, the ministry would collaborate at another level. Yeah.
Chair, the issue of edible oils.
Edible oils.
Okay, I think...
1 minute, please. Yeah.
1 minute on that. I think the issue of edible oils has gone on for a while. I think the big issue was that it needed to meet the standards and the expectations that have been set by the Ministry of Public Health with regard to vitamin A. Yes. So, and it's important that all imported products meet those requirements.
Oh, yeah. Excuse me. But obviously, when you give a down mark from the port of manufacturing, that is supposed to be clear without inspection. How do you give a down mark and then come and tell them that they cannot be clear?
Okay, sorry, I'd forgotten to mention that. When you give somebody a diamond mark, that is a mark that they also need to continue demonstrating compliance with the same. It's not set in stone that if you got a diamond mark in 2000, your manufacturing practices may change, and it is, and I think the country reserves the right to verify upon importation of goods that they are still compliant.
Chair, I think on that matter might be something we can discuss further, but not now, and we don't have time. But the issue is, how does the government take money, even taxation? You tax everything and you receive money from the people who have imported goods, and then you keep the goods at the port, and the government has taxed them, they have paid everything, but then, and actually I think there was a directive also from the president that those things should be released. But somehow, I think between the multi-agencies, there's some gridlock somewhere, and already it's almost 1 year. And I think those are some of the issues, because you are supposed to be assisting the executive. Those are some of the issues that the people, Munomo Mwananchi, is complaining about. I came, the same government allowed me to bring these things. I paid the taxes, then why are you holding my goods? And I think they have also done a test showing even what is locally here and what had been imported. What has been imported is maybe of even higher quality. But it seems there's somewhere that there's no communication between the government and the people who are importing the edible oils.
Wait, so should the question be, should the verification, should inspection be the first issue before you can apply taxation? Because why tax, then take it for verification, and then say the standard, KBS, or whomever it may be, comes and says, no, this is not the quality we need, and the government has collected the tax, and the government takes forever to refund, even when they say it's not good quality. I think that's the issue. Yeah. That you shouldn't have, first of all, even attempted to tax before verifying that the goods are of, is it merchantable quality, or they are of standards that
they comply, yes.
They comply with the standards expected.
And the expectation is that when you're importing goods, you have actually confirmed that they meet the standards and the requirements of the country. Yeah.
Because you know these importations and things and goods, there is always a pre-shipment inspection, even, isn't it?
It should be done outside the country.
It should be done out of the country.
Outside the country, and you supply the COC that confirms that the goods meet the standards. That's a requirement.
But still, when they land here, they're still supposed to be again inspected.
No, I think.
Or is it verification?
No, I think you do spot checks, just like audit. You must, I mean, as a country, to ensure that there is integrity of the system, that the country reserves the right to do some spot checks. But there is no requirement that you must re-inspect. It's just testing. But I think on the specific matters, I agree that's something that you could take on a little bit later.
Chair, through you, my request is that she looks at that matter. Because already there were like 800 containers. Half of them were released. Yeah, and others were not released. So how do you justify?
Yeah, then it will be looked into, because
it's a matter that I would like her to note. It's a matter that's affecting many traders.
Mr. Speaker.
Yeah.
Chair, it is true that there is a very serious confusion, and like you suggested, we need to look at it later. But just as she goes, she needs to understand that the inspection outside, pre-inspection, is done on behalf of Kenya Bureau of Standards. And the Kenya Bureau of Standards pay the agents who inspect on their behalf. So why will you pay someone and not trust him? You know, it's a very big issue, and the aspect of verifying before charging tax, I think, Chair, it's very crucial.
Well, I think that the proposal should be that the response was at the spot, just like audits, where sometimes value for money audits don't take the entire project or facility. But I think when I think you find that the goods which have been certified by a person or a body that you pay, that Kenya Bureau of Standards has contracted, have not met the standards, I think there should be disciplinary action, including disqualification. That should be.
And that has happened.
So that people can know that when they are contracted by Kenya, we mean business, isn't it? Is that the case?
Yeah, that has happened. Actually, 2 years ago, I was still at the Ministry of Industry. Upon review of failures of products once spot checks by KEPS were undertaken, the inspection agencies were penalized. So there's actually, the contract provides for fines and suspension. So, and that did happen until they put in place the necessary measures on their side. Because these are contracted parties, I agree, because KEPS cannot be everywhere, but you contract a party, and if they fail to discharge, then there is a penalty for it.
Thank you very much, Betty Maina. I think we've had a good engagement with you. We wish you the very best. Thank you for coming and being forthright with us.
Thank you. This has been a pleasure, Mr. Chairman.
I think now, you know, in a committee which I chair, I will. No, it's okay, it's okay, it's okay. You know, you can do that in those things that you do. Please, in a committee that I chair, I don't want. Let's finish, and then we can be able to say something which you want to say, even if there's anything. Those are the great things you can do them out there, not here. Yeah. I mean, we all could greet many people, but let's just finish. Let's finish them. Yeah, I'm not refusing you to greet. I know you like shaking hands, Mashadan. But you can go and shake hands out there. Now, so honourable members, I think that brings us to the end of our today's session. As agreed yesterday, staff, Florence, and your team. Yeah, so including the Mercedes, there are two members who are not on WhatsApp. There's Chemutai and Jimmy Angwenyi and John Bundy. But at least the beauty is that they were all there yesterday. Yeah? Yes, the media now we can allow you to leave because I have